In this episode of Retro Car Guy 530, we're going to review the BlackVue DR750 2-channel LTE camera and the BlackVue PowerMagic B-112 battery pack. In this video, I'll be reviewing the BlackVue DR750 2-channel LTE dash camera bundle along with the BlackVue PowerMagic battery pack B-112 model. The battery pack is used for the parking mode support of the 2-channel LTE camera, and I'll be giving you my honest thoughts about both of these. I was supplied both of these by Pittasoft free of charge for review purposes, but I was given no restrictions, what I can and can't say, so make sure you check out the final thoughts section at the end of the video for my opinions on both of those products. Expand the description section and you'll see the video sections block of that, which has time indexes into the various sections of this video. It'll probably be a somewhat lengthy video, so make sure you check that out if you want to jump to a particular section and check out that in the review. I have installed this in my current project vehicle, my 2014 Chevrolet Caprice PPV, which is on my YouTube channel, and I have a pre-existing camera, which is a ThinkWare F800 Pro 2-channel camera. The DR750 2-channel LTE is a 1080p capable camera front and rear, and the ThinkWare F800 Pro is as well. So I will be comparing both of those as far as video quality. So there'll be a section comparing daytime driving video front and rear cameras, parking mode comparison, and also some nighttime video as well. And I'll then go through a section where I'll talk about the longevity of the battery pack, whether it's the appropriate one to be using with this particular camera, and how long it lasts in parking mode, because having the LTE connectivity for the camera gives you the assurance that you can be made aware of events when they take place, but that's only as good as the power source for the camera powering it. So is the B-112 up to the task of supplying the power for your particular driving habits? We'll find that out. And then we'll go through a section going through the features of both the camera, the battery pack, and BlackVue Cloud. I am using a cell provider here in North America, T-Mobile. I have their $10 a month prepaid plan, which includes 2 gigabytes of LTE data speed connectivity. It is an unlimited plan beyond that, but it does slow down, but at least I won't have any overreach charges. And I believe 2 gigabytes should be sufficient for my needs. And then I'll be using the BlackVue Cloud free plan with this particular review, since I don't want to add any extra cost to this, but we'll go through the various levels of plans that they have and how much they cost and for how many cameras. So with that, I'm going to jump into the next section. But again, make sure you check out the description section for the links for the video sections, anything that you might find that you be interested in. There's also some affiliate links down below, so if you want to help support the channel, check those out. And anything that you purchase through an affiliate link, I will make a commission on, but at no extra cost to you. And make sure you check out the full video and make sure you get all the information, and let's get into it. Here are the 2 front cameras installed in my vehicle. We have the ThinkWare F800 Pro that I'm comparing the DR750 2-channel LTE camera bundle with. And the front camera for the DR750 2-channel is on the right here. And then we have the cables running through the center of the car right now. Since the BlackVue camera is temporarily installed, we'll see if we switch over to it, depending on my findings and how well it's suited for this particular vehicle. And then, of course, I have the cabling on the BlackVue camera here. I have the video cable running to the rear camera that's in the top center there, and then the power coming up from the battery pack is in the lower right there. So we have them offset, so I don't, like I said, don't block the front lenses on either, but I do have a circular polarizing filter on the ThinkWare camera, since it is a feature now available directly from ThinkWare, but BlackVue does not offer such a feature on the BlackVue cameras. So if there are any available, they'll be third-party for the BlackVue products, but none from BlackVue at this point in time. Then down below, we have the installation where I have the battery pack at this point. The B-112 is right here. I have the power adapter plug for the camera to plug into the power port connection from the battery pack here. And then the power cord that goes to the charging source goes to the center power port I have in my vehicle, which is a switched power port. So that's the front installation. And here are the 2 rear cameras. On the left, I have the BlackVue camera, and on the right, I have the ThinkWare camera. They're both 1080p capable rear-facing cameras. We're now going to unbox the BlackVue cloud-enabled dash camera, the DR750 2-channel LTE version of the camera. This is not the DR750S. This is the new camera that came out in 2020 with LTE connectivity. The front camera has been changed to allow for the circuitry and antenna for LTE connectivity, so you don't need to use a Wi-Fi hotspot or anything to get to the BlackVue Cloud functionality. And we're going to take a look at what's in the box. So let's go ahead and walk around the box here. We can see that we have the picture of the two cameras inside. The LTE circuitry is only in the front camera. The rear camera, I believe, is identical to the DR750S version of this camera. And then on the bottom of the box, we have some copyright information. We do have some product specific and serial number in IMEI specific, which is the LTE chipset unique identifier. So I've covered that up with a piece of paper and some tape there, since that's specific to this particular camera. Now on the ends of the boxes, we have the DR750-2 LTE feature set here that you can pause and take a look at. And the functionality of the video chipset and resolutions and all that are the same as the DR750S camera. So there's no difference there. The main purpose here is, again, the LTE connectivity. And then on this end, we have the BlackVue Cloud, which is the main purpose of what if you're buying this camera, your main intention is to have connectivity to BlackVue Cloud, although you can connect one Wi-Fi connected device to this camera and use it as a hotspot for LTE connectivity. This camera does require that you have a nano SIM card to enable it to communicate with a cell carrier in your area. This should be the North American version, which is good in the United States and Canada. Make sure you check out the information specific to your region. We'll cover that a little bit more in the video later on. But let's go ahead and open up the bottom of the box here. We still have the seals intact. And let's open up the box. Very tight box. There we go. We got it coming out now. All right. Finally have the top of the box taken off. There is a very tight fit. So we have that now off. And we can see the two cameras. Of course, this is the front camera with the LTE circuitry in it, the rear camera, and then there's some product, or actually camera-specific information as far as the Wi-Fi information and also the BlackVue Cloud code. So I've covered that up with a piece of tape. I did that with I directly covered that with a piece of tape in my other review of my DR900S, and it ended up pulling off some of the printing, so I put paper over it this time. And as we can see, we have the LTE front camera. Let's move the box off to the side for the moment. And we have, it's quite sizable compared to the earlier version. I'm comparing to the DR900S, which this still seems a bit larger. Of course, we have the lock for the windshield where you can press that and rotate. We have this protective paper film over the front camera. We have the adhesive pad here, and then the the BlackVue label is here. And then on the bottom, we have these additional LEDs that will be defined a little bit later in the video, but we have recording, GPS, and Wi-Fi LTE, which this is new related to the functionality of the LTE connectivity. And you can see there's a lot more holes available in the camera for heat dissipation, and that was one of the complaints that some owners had of some of the heat dissipation issues in the cameras, plus the additional circuitry being added for LTE connectivity requires some additional cooling to take place. And then when you remove the end cap here, you have the same rotational capability. There's also some camera connectivity info. There's a QR code in here as well, like in the box. So I'm not going to expose that directly, but it will show the area here that it has the nano SIM tray. There should be a little tool that you can use to push in to extract that tray. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's the front camera. And again, this front mount is different. It's unique to the LTE version because of its new size. The rear camera is the same as before. It's a 1080p full high definition camera, and the cable connectivity over on this end with the adhesive pad. So if you had a 750S 2-channel, I believe you could reuse the camera, but if not, you could always swap it out. But it's a very simple installation. Adhere this to an appropriate vantage point on the rear window, plug in the cable, run that to the front. avoiding all airbags and other important things like that. And then we have what looks like was a lens cap that was supposed to be on here. So we'll put that back on. And then we have, of course, the stuff that most people don't look at, but you probably do want to take a look at in this case. We have the SIM activation guide, and then of course the quick start guide, which is related to powering it up, getting it activated and all that. So you want to make sure you review these before you activate your camera and get it up and running or install it in your vehicle. And then on the lower section we have the goodies bag down here. See if we can get this out a little bit easier than the cover came off. Okay. And power adapter, camera to camera cable, the other installation goodies, and that's all that's in that particular lower box. So let's go through these first. We have the power adapter, which is typically the power adapter into the camera. It is a 2-wire power adapter. This does not support a 3-wire adapter, so if you're looking for discrete parking mode detection, this is again a camera that uses motion detection as far as inactivity of motion to cause it to go into parking mode. Then here is the video cable, which you need to run to the back camera, and there's I believe an F and an R on the cable, if I remember right, to know which end is for which camera. And make sure you don't run this over any of your side curtain airbags or anything. Avoid the airbags or go underneath them so they can deploy successfully. And then we have a trim tool and adhesive pads, a micro SD card reader. We have an micro SD card that came with it. Let's see what we got. I believe it's supposed to be a 64 gigabyte, which it is. And here's that little tool for the SIM card, nano SIM card tray, trim tool, micro SD card reader, extra adhesive pads in case you need to replace your windshield or you need to move it, and then the adhesive wire clips to help you properly route the cabling, avoiding things or dripping cables and things like that. So those are the items that came in the box. Again, we're going to have a 2-wire capability for power only, which is matches up identically to the B-112 battery pack. So again, this is for parking mode detection with inactivity. That's how this camera detects that. So there's no need to have any 3rd wire for switched power to determine when the engine is running or not. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the feature set and then get it installed to the point where I activate the SIM card and go through all those steps. I'm going to do some bench testing first before I actually install it in the vehicle. So let's get into that now. Let's take a look at some of the general features of the DR750 2-channel LTE camera bundle. Both front and rear cameras are full high-definition 1080p capable cameras, but the front records at 60 frames per second, with the rear camera recording at 30 frames per second. And the image quality was there on the screen. Both are using the same Sony Starvis CMOS sensor, which is true of the earlier version, the DR750S, so it's the same image quality between the earlier version and this version of the camera. But this version, of course, has the 4G LTE connectivity. And make sure that you purchase the appropriate unit for your region of the world or where you'll be operating the camera. It has different circuitry and antenna compatibility for the cell providers in that region of the world. And then the advantage of having the 4G LTE connectivity, one is to be able to use the BlackVue cloud, and you can have one device connected to the camera and use it as a hotspot. But the main point of this camera is, of course, to take advantage of the features of the BlackVue cloud. Now, you don't need a SIM card in the camera to have the camera operate. You still record to a micro SD card for all the video files, but the main point of this camera is to take advantage of the nice features of BlackVue cloud. Here's a comparison picture of the DR750 2-channel LTE on the bottom compared to the earlier model, the DR750S 2-channel. You can see that the camera body on the front is larger. It does have additional ventilation holes to handle the cooling necessary for the LTE hardware. Plus, it does handle the internal heat dissipation from the camera a bit better with those additional holes. You can see that the mount is different, so you cannot reuse the mount from your previous DR750S if you're upgrading. So you have to replace that on the windshield, but the power and cabling to the rear camera is the same. On the front side of the front camera, of course, we have the camera lens, and then on the bottom we have the front security LED. On the rear side, we have the speaker, the recording LED showing the 3 different modes for that, And the three modes include normal recording for normal operations of the camera, event recording, which can be derived from impact detection and motion detection events, and then parking mode recording, which can be set to motion detection and impact detection as one setting, or time lapse. When parking mode has been enabled within the camera settings, parking mode detection operates as follows. Parking mode is started after the camera has detected that the vehicle is not moved for a total of 5 minutes, and the camera will exit parking mode when it detects movement, and within a few seconds of detecting the movement, parking mode will be completed. Now moving on to the GPS light, it will be a blue color when a GPS signal has been acquired by the dash camera. The Wi-Fi LTE status LED reports the connectivity status of both Wi-Fi and LTE data connections. The Wi-Fi network, if it's up and running, will supersede the LTE status, so make sure you're aware of that. With the Wi-Fi network on, if it's a steady white color, the Wi-Fi network is up and running. If it's a white blinking light, slowly blinking, then there's an attempt to connect. And if it's white blinking quickly, then there's a connection error or it's shutting down. If it's on solid green, then there is an LTE connection, and the LED with a no color means no connectivity, LTE, or Wi-Fi. Now we're going to take a look at the ends of the camera. On the left of the picture here, we have the end with the proximity sensor, which is customizable. Default mode is to turn on and off audio recordings. You can configure it to also perform manual recording events. And if I recall correctly, you can also turn off the feature altogether. The middle section, we show the other end of the camera, which now has a dedicated format button and a dedicated Wi-Fi button. And on the right-hand side of this picture here, you can see that there's the actions. You do a long press twice for the format button to initiate that action, and then to click on the Wi-Fi button to turn on and off Wi-Fi. And then underneath that cover is where we have the micro SD card slot that you would install, and it does support up to 256 gigabytes of storage capacity in this card slot. To insert or remove the nano SIM card, you need to use the tool pictured on the right, which is supplied with the camera. You insert the tip of that into the hole pointed to by the red arrow, and that will eject the tray. The SIM card is simply sitting in that tray, so make sure you're careful as you eject that out that it doesn't pop out or drop down on the car floor. So it can get away from you pretty quickly, but make sure you insert that correctly. It's only able to be inserted into the tray in one position, but make sure you check that before you insert it back into the camera. You have a few different power options for powering the dash camera. One is you could plug it directly into a power port in your vehicle. Two, you could use the PowerMagic Pro power adapter, which will cut off the power to the dash camera after the car's battery voltage has been depleted down to the voltage level selected in the device. Three, you could use the PowerMagic B-112 battery pack, which is what I'm going to be using in this particular installation. And if you wish to support longer parking mode times, you would then want to use the BlackVue PowerMagic Ultra Battery B-124X, which I did review on my channel, so check out the link in the upper right-hand corner or down in the description section of this video for more information on that product. I'm on the BlackVue.com website, and I'm taking a look at the BlackVue Cloud information page on that website. I will have a link to this page down in the description section of this video, so you can check that out after watching the review. Of course, the top part here, we show see that the bidirectional nature of the camera to the cloud and cloud to the app is represented. There is a marketing video link here, so if you want to check out that video, you can click on that link once you're on this page. And as far as the free add-on service and the major features that are available, of course, we have the emergency alarm, video backup, remote video playback, and live view. So those are the main features, and they're available with the free plan, but there are some limits on how many times you can use those particular features. So we'll check that out in just a little bit. And then we can take a look at the compatible models of cameras with BlackVue Cloud. Of course, we're taking a look at the DR750 2-channel LTE camera. It has LTE connectivity right in the camera. Then that makes it much easier to get on the internet for BlackVue Cloud connectivity. There are some additional newer cameras from BlackVue as well this year, that the X series, that have some improvements in the camera itself as far as heat resistance for high heat conditions, and parking mode detection has changed using a 3-wire arrangement instead of the 2-wire power supply from the other cameras. So you might want to check those out, but their LTE connectivity is through an external LTE module from BlackVue, not directly in the camera. And then, of course, we have the older series cameras from BlackVue that didn't have any LTE, but they did have Wi-Fi, so their connectivity path to the cloud was through a Wi-Fi hotspot. And I did have a review of the DR900S with the B-124X battery pack, so you might want to check that out if you want to find more information about that camera. And then let's go down here. As far as the features, it gives you some graphics again about the bidirectional nature, the connectivity, internet connection, the BlackVue app viewer, and then the 3 different types of plans: the individual, targeted towards an individual plan, maybe the free plan, the small business owner, and then the company with large fleets. Take a look at that again in just a moment down the chart down at the bottom here. Of course, we have the alert, different features, the alert push notifications when an impact or something takes place. The remote live view gives you the ability to check out what's going on at any point in time. The video backup and auto upload, 2-way voice communications. Now, most people will probably have a cell phone, so you might communicate with them over just a cell phone. But in case someone's driving that doesn't have one, you do have a way to have two-way voice communications with them. GPS tracking is possible as well, and the paid plans include 90-day access to that data. And of course, the remote video playback, the live auto upload of video files from the camera to the cloud. And then when an event takes place, it will automatically upload the video file to the cloud if you configure that way. And then cloud FOTA, which people are going, what's FOTA? That's firmware over the air. So you can do remote firmware upgrades of your camera without having to be in the car at all. Here are the 3 plans that are available from BlackVue for the BlackVue Cloud offering. Of course, the free plan, everyone can sign up for it. So you can have 1 user per account, you can have 1 dash cam per account, and the number of live views per day is limited to 10. And then, of course, remote video playback and downloads per month is 100 per month. Cloud storage is 5 gigabytes, which is a reasonable amount. And then a cloud file expiration of 90 days. So files uploaded will expire and be removed from the cloud after 90 days. You do have push notifications, which is one of the main features. I'm looking forward to this, so you can see what's going on or be notified when something happens at the vehicle. 2-way voice communications is possible with the free plan as well, and live GPS, but it's not retained for any number of days. That's not part of the free plan here. And then you have the limits here for event live auto uploads. And for live auto uploads and file auto uploads here. So it's 2 days under the free plan. And then smart plan, which is kind of like the advanced user or small business person, small business operations that want to take advantage of more features or more cameras. You have unlimited live views per day. Remote video playbacks are unlimited per month. You still have 5 gigabytes per dash cam, but you can have up to 3 dash cams. And the cloud file storage expiration is basically 1 year. And then the same basic features, except you have 7 days of GPS tracking. And then this is included, I believe, at 7 days based on the check marks being here, as stated over here. And then the fleet plan is targeted for the small business owner that's got a fleet of vehicles, or any business owner that has a fleet of vehicles that they want to be able to track this information on a large number of vehicles. It is $25 a month with 15 per extra dash cam, virtually almost 1,999 cameras. Again, unlimited live views per day and remote video playbacks and downloads per month. 15 gigabytes per dash cam, so you can store more files per dash cam. It's still cloud file expiration for 1 year, but all features are available, and GPS tracking is expanded to 90 days. And then you might want to take a look at this section as well, as far as data consumption estimates, as far as the types of ways you're going to be using it in file transfers and communications with the camera over the internet connection there. And then as far as the playback and backup, and then the live auto uploads. So make sure you check out this page to understand the features in each plan. I'm again going to be targeting the free plan for my particular usage for this review. And if you want to consider using one of the other plans, you have to calculate the cost of the data plan you need to purchase to support the data transfers necessary for that type of usage, plus the particular BlackVue Cloud plan. As an individual user, the data plan that I'm using is a T-Mobile one at $10 a month for 2 gigabytes included in that particular plan. Then if I start adding these smart plan costs, the cost of the plan to operate that camera on a yearly basis becomes somewhat expensive. So I see most individuals that are using it for a single car to probably take advantage of the free plan. This is a BlackVue PowerMagic battery pack B-112. And the seal's not even broken yet, so let's open this up and see what's inside. And we have the battery pack itself with some protective film on the top. We have the connections, the DC in from the charging side, which is probably going to be a power port. The dash cam, which is a 2-wire only. So this will not support 3-wire cameras such as the X series. And then you have USB outputs, which is good if you're trying to power something USB power based. You could possibly use it to charge your phone or something like that. But I'm mainly going to be charging or powering the dash camera with this battery pack. And it has a mounting bracket, which disconnects from it for mounting purposes. Let's see what else we have in the box here. Protective foam. And then underneath we have the other goodies along with the manual information. So that looks like it's all of it in the box. So we have a product warranty card, the owner's manual, which is available in the printed version here. There's also a PDF version I was able to download. And then in this particular plastic bag, we have the power source for the battery pack. It is a power port adapter, so you will be able to charge this, but you got to make sure that when you plug this into something that it's only a switched power, only when the accessory or ignition is on. Otherwise, you will drain your car's battery unprotected to a low level if you're charging this. Let's say you've drained this by use, and then you go to start your vehicle, and of course your alternator is usually charging the system at that point, but you turn it off, then if it's a constant power, unswitched power, it will be charging this and could possibly drain the car down to a low level. So make sure you're selective in which power ports you use with this. And then of course we have the dash camera output power port adapter. Again, it's a 2-wire only, so cameras such as the 750 or the 750 2-channel LTE or anything that's 2-wire requirements for power will work with this. And we have some mounting screws for the bracket if we want to screw it into something. And then they've also provided the industrial Velcro, looks like mounting pads to be able to mount that bracket somewhere off on the side if you wish to use the Velcro pads, which I've usually found pretty good success with Velcro pads like that. So that's what's in the box. We're going to, again, plug this in and get this powered up. I have a 12-volt power adapter, AC to DC adapter. I'm going to first charge this up and get it fully charged. Then we're going to connect it to the DR750 2-channel LTE camera and get that configured. And then I'll run a parking mode test to see how long it will actually drive the parking mode's operations of that particular camera. So that's the unboxing of the PowerMagic Battery Pack B-112. In this segment, I'm going to go over the SIM card setup, the firmware over-the-air process, and configuring the camera. Here's the SIM card slot. There's a small hole at the end that you use the extraction tool to remove that. Here's the rear camera with the straight connector plugged into it, and then the 90-degree connector goes into the front camera, which I'll be placing on the table here for demonstration purposes. I have the memory card slot exposed on the end of the camera, and you insert the micro SD card, which I received a 64 gigabyte with the camera. And then I'm using the SIM card extraction tool to pop out that tray. If you have a SIM card already in there, it will pop out pretty easily, so make sure you align it correctly when you go to reinsert it and click it into place. We now have the video cable connected to the end of the camera, and now we're connecting the power cable, and that's going to be from this battery pack. I'm connecting to the Wi-Fi of the camera because I'm going to be activating the SIM card. We go into the BlackVue app, go to the Wi-Fi connection, and go up to the upper right for SIM card. We go next to search for the APN for the SIM card provider, which I have T-Mobile in the United States. So you click on the search link, and then you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, which I ended up finding. Of course, it's ordered by country. I selected T-Mobile, which has that particular APN. No username or password was required. SIM card settings are ready, and it's ready to be activated, and it took a few moments for it to be reconnected over the network. So now I'm connecting to my home Wi-Fi to connect to the BlackVue cloud. So I click on cloud here, then I click on add camera, And I'm going to go ahead and scan that QR code that's on the end of the camera or in the box, which allows me to add the camera to the app and the cloud application. And it asks me if you want to allow my device to access the GPS data, which I do. So the camera is added successfully. Next we go and we can see in the My Camera section the camera that I just added to the application. And after the camera is connected to the cloud, it will show the LTE status bars for the signal strength. And now I'm going to go connect to the cloud again here. And again, I see that in the upper right corner, we have the blue dot next to the 3 dots. It means we have a firmware update pending, or at least there's some changes to be made there. And I'm going to go ahead and set the time settings here. And anytime you change the time settings, it will format the micro SD card. So make sure you have everything saved off. I chose the incorrect time zone at first. So it should be your base time zone and then toggle whether it's daylight savings time or not. So when you save those time settings, it will cause the camera to reboot. It will format the micro SD card. So make sure you have everything backed up as necessary. So now we're back up after the camera has restarted. And I'm going to go to the remote firmware update, which is firmware over the air FOTA. And we see that version 1.004 is available for this particular camera. And then I performed a FOTA upload of the firmware, which took several minutes. I have an elapsed timer, which I have a separate video showing all of this. I may place that on the channel as well. And it took about 9 minutes to get the firmware downloaded to the camera over the LTE connection, but it was successful. And then the camera rebooted. So after rebooting, we can see that firmware is 1.004, and I'm going in and checking the privacy settings, making sure that the share location is off. By default, it is off, so that others can't see your location on the map. And then some of the various firmware settings for sensitivity, and the G-sensor settings and the motion detection. So for G-sensor for normal mode, I found these to be a little aggressive, so you might want to back these off just a little bit. Parking mode, you want it to be fairly aggressive for impacts in case someone hits the vehicle while parked. And then in the motion detection, you can select which zones for front and rear are going to be active for motion detection. In the system section, we have the LED for the security LED on the front and when you want that to be active. And I found it can be kind of annoying at night for the rear one to be on. For the proximity sensor on the left end of the camera, you can cause it to take a manual recording action. You can toggle the voice recordings or you set the proximity sensor to off in the firmware settings. And then for voice guidance, the announcements that come from the camera, user text overlay, which I put my company name in there, so that'll be in the upper left-hand corner of all the videos recorded. And then for the cloud service, of course, you want that enabled. It's the whole point of the LTE camera. And then the various push notifications that you wish to be notified of when events happen. And then we have the language selection, which I'm leaving as English. And then when you save those changes, you will get this prompt here when you back out to the point of exiting, and then it will restart the camera. Since I didn't change the time zone in this situation, it does not reformat at this particular point. And then when we go back in after it's restarted, we want to look at the event auto upload settings. And when you want it to upload various files, you can toggle those. And then for the recordings, you can toggle the various types of settings for those, whether you want voice recording, what type of parking mode. I chose time-lapse, which is the default, but it still has impact detection in that particular situation. I select miles per hour as my speed unit since I'm here in the United States. And then we go off to the video section, whether the brightness is correct or not. It seemed to be okay for me, make any adjustments there. And then when you go to save again, it will cause the camera to be rebooted. And then once it's rebooted, we get up here to the point of looking at some event auto uploads. I caused some events to take place and it's actually uploading. And you can see here on the screen that the files are only retained for 2 days with the free plan, which I will talk about in the cloud section of the video. I did have some errors that occurred. When I tried to download the quick play files or the files from the camera, it would eventually time out after about 30 seconds. Eventually, the camera would end up disconnecting from the cloud server, which is a problem. I'm investigating at this point whether it's a carrier issue or the camera firmware issue. I was curious whether this worked in a different location better, so I ended up going to Folsom, California to try out the LiveVue. That worked just fine. That always worked fine here as well. But then I tried to download a file at that same location, and it did not work. As in the same kind of error appeared. So I believe I need to follow up with Pittasoft on this particular one. and you can see here that the notification includes that the camera has disconnected from the cloud. While editing this video, I found that a new version of firmware was available as of November 9th, according to the BlackVue website. It states November 6th here. I then attempted to perform another firmware over-the-air upgrade, and it did get to about 34% before it just stalled, and then did present the notification that the camera had disconnected. So I thought I was kind of messed up at that point as far as the firmware upgrade, but I went out to the camera and found that it was still performing it. It did install it and upgrade to version 1.005. I then retested the download of the video files from it, and actually the first one worked, so that looked promising. Then I waited a couple of minutes and then attempted a second video download, and the same errors were still present. So firmware 1.005 does not resolve my issue that I'm having with my camera. One additional test I performed before installing the camera into my vehicle is this battery discharge test and a recharge timing test. I wanted to see how long this B-112 battery pack from BlackVue would supply the parking mode requirements of this LTE camera. Depending on your particular driving habits, it may or may not, but I found it a bit lacking as far as the overall time. It does state that the battery pack will supply power to a single channel dash camera for approximately 12 hours. So a dual channel will be reduced, and with the LTE connectivity, it will be further reduced. And I found 9 hours and 49 minutes is the maximum amount of time that I was able to get out of this in parking mode. I ran 3 different tests over a few different days, and they were about that amount of time on average. The recharge time also is a little bit more than I was expecting. The manual for the B112 battery pack states approximately 1 hour, and it's actually about 1 hour and 24 minutes on my tests. So depending on your driving habits, you may not be driving the vehicle long enough to fully recharge the battery pack. If you don't fully recharge it, you won't get the full time. For an LTE dash camera such as the DR750 2-channel LTE camera, I might recommend you check out the BlackVue PowerMagic Ultra Battery B-124X model. It has the ability to be hardwired into the vehicle to reduce the charging times. It has a larger capacity, so it will support a 2-channel camera such as this approximately up to 20 hours, which should be sufficient for most daily drivers of vehicles. But check that out and or weigh the features available in the B-112, see which one meets your needs. But I might recommend you check a larger capacity battery pack for your parking mode needs for this particular camera. In this video segment, I'm going to be comparing the video from the BlackVue camera, the DR750 2-channel LTE, with my pre-existing ThinkWare F800 Pro 2-channel camera. This is from the BlackVue camera, front view, daytime, well lit, and it's decent quality. Now I'm comparing it with the split screen here. You can see the BlackVue on the top, ThinkWare on the bottom. The coloring from the ThinkWare camera seems to be a little bit more realistic. They're both Sony Starvis 2.1 megapixel chipsets, so they should be producing similar video quality. And the BlackVue camera, though recording at 60 frames per second, has a little bit more crisp, expanded image of that speed limit sign there on the side of the freeway. So decent quality out of both, but it's not 4K quality like out of the DR900S camera. Now this is the rear camera, daytime well lit, from the BlackVue camera, and it's decent quality video. Color saturation looks decent. And then we're going to do a comparison between the two camera chipsets again here. We're going to have the BlackVue on the top, ThinkWare on the bottom. And again, when comparing it against the other camera, the ThinkWare coloring seems to be a little bit more realistic, but they both have similar video quality overall. And we're going to focus in on a couple signs across the freeway. And they're both at 30 frames per second, so they produce similar quality when zooming in on some stationary object like a license plate or a freeway sign. Here is the parking mode from the BlackVue camera, and it goes several minutes in a small file, so parking mode is good in this time-lapse mode. Of course, you have the option for motion and impact detection, and this is the rear camera. So video quality is decent for parking mode. I tend to prefer time-lapse video. That way I get to see everything going on, even though the motion and impact detection should capture the seconds around the event. You can look at some nighttime footage from the front BlackVue camera in this bundle, the DR750 front camera. It's 1080p at 60 frames per second using the Sony Starvis chipset, and it has a slight brown hue to the color. And if you compare it with the ThinkWare camera on the bottom, so the BlackVue is on the top, ThinkWare on the bottom, the think where footage tends to be a little more clear to me, at least for my particular eyes. I tend to prefer that footage, but the 60 frames per second capable camera in the BlackVue camera bundle for the front camera is going to get a little bit more clarity on as far as motion blur. So that's a comparison between the front cameras of those two at night. And then when we switch over to the rear camera, they're both 30 frames per second, same Sony Starvis chipset on both of them with Super Night Vision feature turned on, and they're going to provide similar quality. You can see a lot of halos around the headlights and stoplights. If you need to have something appear clear, such as license plate or street sign or something like that, it has to be extremely close for nighttime footage for that to occur. And even daytime footage, it kind of needs to be fairly close, but the distance requires to be much closer at night to have that clarity. Now, if you need to have high quality recording, you may consider a camera with a 4K front camera and possibly, or a 2K, and then a 2K rear camera as well. I've been working with the BlackVue DR750 2-channel LTE camera bundle for North America over the last couple of weeks, as well as the BlackVue PowerMagic battery pack B-112 model, and I have some likes and dislikes of both of those particular products. Overall, they both work reasonably well, but depending on your particular needs as far as how many times you drive your vehicle, how long you drive them, they'll go into whether those likes and dislikes apply to you as well. On the like side, the simplicity of having LTE built into the camera is great. You just need to install the camera, you obtain the SIM card from the appropriate provider in your region of the world, and get that activated within just a few moments like we saw earlier in the video, and you're up and running. You just drive the vehicle and it works. So that's the great aspect of having the LTE connectivity built into it. Then having the LTE connectivity available gives you access to BlackVue Cloud without doing anything extra. Like in some of the earlier camera models from BlackVue, you had to have a Wi-Fi hotspot and get connected that way. And then you had access to the features from BlackVue Cloud, but then you had the need to power all those things separately while the vehicle is parked. It just wasn't as simple as making sure you had the appropriate power to your camera. So with BlackVue Cloud available, you get event notifications, you can do live streaming of the video and audio, you can have two-way communications with the occupant of the vehicle. You can also get the FOTA, the firmware over the air feature. You can take advantage of that to remotely upgrade the firmware, which is especially advantageous for fleet vehicle distribution of firmware. If you have 30 vehicles and you need to upgrade the firmware, doing it remotely rather than traveling to all 30 vehicles would be much easier. The other thing, the cloud storage feature gives you the ability to get those important files off the camera micro SD card and getting them up in the cloud. That way, if something happens, such as an accident, or let's say the vehicle is stolen, worst case, you have the ability to look at the video files that were captured from those events taking place, and you don't have to rely on physical access to the micro SD card to get them off of the camera memory storage. So great feature to have BlackVue Cloud. There's many other things which we talked about earlier in the video, but I think BlackVue Cloud, the free plan is especially good value, and depending on your needs as a potentially super user or small business person owning a fleet of vehicles, the other paid plans might be appropriate depending on your needs. The things that I liked about the battery pack, the B-112 battery pack, it was small form factor. You should be able to install it in a variety of locations within your vehicle. So that makes it nice and easy to store away up in underneath the dash or somewhere close to where you need to plug it in for the power, and then of course supply the power to the dash camera. But that's part of the negatives I'll go into as well. So on my dislike side, the first one for the camera is the LTE connectivity is built into the camera, which I listed as a like as well. The problem I see with the LTE connectivity built into the camera is the fact that if you upgrade the camera to another model, you have to buy that hardware all over again. Or if for some reason the camera has a failure or the LTE connectivity has a failure, you lose the ability to potentially, if it's out of warranty, you have to buy a whole new unit to replace it rather than having them separated. Now the X series cameras from BlackVue does have a separate module that gives the LTE connectivity and does obtain the power from the camera itself. So that issue is solved by looking at those X series cameras from BlackVue, so check that out as well if that's a concern for you as well. The fact that the front and rear cameras are only 1080p capable at this point in time in 2020, almost 2021, seems a bit behind the times. There are other cameras such as the 900 series of cameras that have the 4K front, but still 1080p camera in the rear. So if you're looking for higher resolution, you may want to take a look at some of the other offerings from BlackVue. But if you're, again, operating a fleet of vehicles, 1080p resolution may be totally fine for what you're trying to do, and even personal needs, it might be just fine. If that's true, then this camera is potentially for you. The next item on my dislike list is the combination of the power requirements of the dash camera itself versus the power available from whatever power supply you're providing the power to the camera with. In my particular combination in this video, I used the PowerMagic battery pack, the B-112 model, with the DR750-2 LTE, and it was sufficient to drive parking mode for just under 10 hours with 100% charge. Now, your driving habits may not support the full charge of that particular battery pack because it does take between an hour in the documentation and what I found an hour and 24 minutes to fully charge that, because while it's powering the charge function of the battery pack, it's also powering the camera. So depending on what your drive habits are, if you drive 10 minutes one way to work, you're only going to have charge time of 10 minutes in each direction, and the overall charge level of the battery pack may not be sufficient to drive the parking mode while you're parked at work or wherever you're driving your vehicle to and from. So make sure that you've taken that into consideration when it comes to powering your camera. If you're buying this for that kind of cloud connectivity and event notification, and your battery is only supplying power for 3 to 9 hours and you're parking for 10 to 15 hours, it's not going to work. At least it doesn't give you the coverage you are expecting. So in that case, you might want to look for alternative power supplies such as the BlackVue PowerMagic Ultra battery. The B-124X model that I reviewed last year has a larger capacity battery and can be configured to be hardwired so that it can draw 9 amps to quick charge the battery pack, which I believe is in 40 minutes. But each battery pack that you put in there will have some amount of charge time, so make sure that your driving habits support that. A fleet operation may not run into that problem because they may be driving all day long, and it'll have a full charge when the vehicle comes back to the fleet storage yard, and when you turn it off, it may be that 10 hours is sufficient with the B-112. But in most cases, I would think the B-124X would be more likely the better option in those cases. The next item that I have on my dislike list is the fact that I had problems downloading files from the DR750-2CH LTE camera using the cloud download of the file. It seemed to not really work for me. In fact, I would attempt to download a couple of times, and then the camera would disconnect, and sometimes I would actually have to restart the camera before it would reconnect. So that's one concern that I have, that I've sent some inquiries into Pittasoft to see if there's some fixes for that, but I have yet to hear back on that. And I did initially have firmware version 1.002, which came in the camera, and then I upgraded to 1.004 for most of this review, and then today, when I'm filming this, I upgraded to 1.005, and they all seemed, at least 1.004 and 1.005, both have the same problem. So I don't know if it's the camera, cell provider, what at this point in time, but it's certainly not working as I would expect it to. The next item on my dislike list is the parking mode detection feature of this particular camera. I had the same dislike on the DR900S camera. The parking mode detection here is motion-based, and it requires it to be idle in the vehicle for 5 minutes before it enters parking mode, and it does exit parking mode fairly quickly when it detects motion, but that isn't a very realistic detection method, in my opinion, when it comes to real-world driving, especially in busy areas of the world, such as Los Angeles. You might be in a traffic jam and you're not moving for 5 minutes and all of a sudden goes into parking mode. I like a more discrete detection method for parking mode, such as using the ignition switched power. And that's one of the new features available in the 3-wire power configurations for the X series. So the 750X and the 900X are cameras that have that feature. So I would like to see that in a lower camera like this, but that's just one of my pet peeves when it comes to parking mode detection. My next item on the dislike list is next item on my dislike or warning list here is if your region of the world has extreme temperatures, such as cold temperatures, you might want to pay attention to this. The documented temperature range of this camera is -20 Celsius to +70 Celsius, and that's -4 Fahrenheit to +158 Fahrenheit. Now, if you live in the northern half of North America, pretty much where I grew up in the Midwest, up in Minnesota or up in Canada, Alaska, anything that has a really cold winter where things, the temperatures get down to -20, -30 Fahrenheit before wind chills, you might want to keep that in mind, because if you park your vehicle outside and you have this dash camera in there, it's not within the operating temperature range for this camera. So keep that in mind. I don't know of any camera that actually supports those colder temps. The biggest thing has been trying to support the hotter temps where the camera is exposed to the sun in the vehicle, and it does support up to 158 Fahrenheit or 70 Celsius. So if your area is extremely hot, make sure that those temperatures are sufficient for the way you're going to be operating your vehicle or where you're parking your vehicle, so that you have a camera that works all the time for you. Well, there you go. That's my review of the BlackVue DR750 2-channel LTE camera bundle for North America and the BlackVue PowerMagic battery pack B-112. If you liked the information or found it entertaining in some way in this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, make sure you hit the bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos to the channel like this one, or my action cameras, dash cameras, repair info, drones, whatever. Check out the rest of the videos on my channel. I do have the video footage from that section where I showed you the SIM card setup and the firmware of the Air upgrade and all those settings screens. So if you would like to see that as a separate video, it's about 48 minutes in length. So if you would like that to be on the channel, make sure you leave me a comment down in the comment section below stating that you'd like me to create that video. And I will do so, given the amount of time that I have available to it. I'll get it on the channel as soon as possible if I find a demand for it. And check out the description section as well for links to the other videos that I have on the channel related to the DR900S camera that I reviewed last year and the BlackVue PowerMagic Ultra Battery B-124X. Check out the affiliate links down in the description section. That will help support the channel by giving me a commission on anything you purchase through those links. I am an affiliate for BlackboxMyCar.com, so check those out below, and if you decide that you want to purchase a product from them, make sure you use the discount code Robert5 to get a 5% discount on any purchase over $250 US or $300 Canadian. So thanks for coming to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.